Hi, this is me, Oatson from Nerdimations, and I'm back with Doodle Empires. Now, honestly, I think that this is a really cool game. I've played it before on this channel, but I didn't really do much with it. I just made a map and did a few things to it, and that was it. But today, I'm going to actually do stuff. Something cool is that there's like a ton of maps you can use, like the Caribbean, East Asia, the Middle East if you're America and want to practice on imperialism. But for today, I'm going to do Europe. Next, there's like settings, and first I'm going to do only large expands. And that's because honestly, these are useless. Yes, since there's also a button that lets you stop coloring and stuff off at any point. Splits I'm going to bring down. Unions I'm also going to bring down. And for new nations and nations for the first part where there's like not too many countries, I'm going to keep this pretty high. Don't say the meme. But later on when there's like more countries already, I'm not going to be adding new ones. New leaders are practically pointless. I'm just keeping them in because why not? Building castles, I like it. Founding religions should be rarer than adopting them. That way more people will adopt religions. Diverging origins is like breaking apart culture, so that's pretty often. And let's keep ages like that. Give ourselves plenty of draw power. And we're going to keep all the age settings normal. Anyways, now it's time to begin. I'm thinking let's do our first country in the Pannonian Basin. Now, a rule for this series is that I'm going to only ever change the colors of an area to significantly different if their origin splits. So if you have the same origin, you have pretty close colors. This is Radia, I guess. I cannot be trusted with naming stuff well. Okay, so we have Radia. Yeah, every turn you draw a card, by the way, and that card tells you what to do. We'll call this Mycenae, sure. It seems that our nation... Wait, what is its name again? It's in being... Radia is doing pretty well. They've conquered most of the Pannonian Basin, and totally no issue. But I haven't got a new nation. Oh, Age of Division. This means that probably Radia will split. Yep, they already did, huh? I'm thinking here is like the most remote areas, so we're going to make Gitos, huh? Gitos, I guess. Mistype. Yeah, so I think this is good. Oh, damn. We're going to name this one Western Radia and make it a little more darker than the original. So basically, what began was a civil war between the Radians, between the people west of the Ready River. What are the names I'm concocting? And those to the east of the Ready River. By the way, there are different modes on the map. The Mycenaean zone was still more or less in the hands of the Eastern Radians. Western Radians then had another another split where the people who would call themselves the Alexa decided to secede. The Ilex then launched an invasion of what will be later called the Alekan Mountains. And after this invasion of the Alekan Mountains, they'd push into Western Rhodia. Meanwhile, right next to these basins was a new one, in the Danubian Basin, I guess, or the Southern Rhodian Basin if you are Rhodian. This was Hyrkos, which actually got its name from the Proto-Indo-European word for bear. So that's a nice note. They conquered the central regions and of the regions of the basin, and then they split with Boer, or coming out from the coastal regions, which were more interested in trading than the Hyrkos in the center, who later lost their leader. Meanwhile, the original Rhodians got a new leader, and afterwards they broke again with Jaime. Jaime was another state formed from a outer region of the country. The Rhodians were getting totally clowned on at this point. And to the west formed a new nation, Balara, the Balaran horde. They formed in what would be called the Bella region, and they quickly found infighting with the Kaida horde. What the hell? The Kaida horde. What is happening? Yeah, this sometimes happens. So, okay, we're back. Don't worry, those were like minor rendering issues. Okay, so we have the Kaida horde and the Balaran horde. Yeah, the age of okay, I think the age strength needs to be lowered, And the Myra state, they weren't exactly as much of a horde as they were a small kingdom. Meanwhile, the Rhodians decided to get a new leader. Apparently, their old one was not good enough. They then finally began the reconquests. And these reconquests, they would attack to neighboring states, including the southern Rhodians. They then moved on to western Rhodians. At this point, now there was some hope that the country would be brought to a renaissance. But then the Makara came, another rebel state that ate again from the south, that once again competed with Rhodia. The Rhodians, though, did found the Order of the Altar, originally used is to help govern the country, it slowly became a deistic group. And the order of the altar, or quickly, it was read. Afterwards, the Rhodians planned to make an offensive, but failed to do so. And to their north, the Polabs formed, probably the first people / country based off of a real one. The Polabs decided to make it the second city in the beautiful city of Polabia. Now, some people say that Polabia didn't exist until a few turns later, but most written in oral records do date it back to turn 24. Meanwhile, the Rhodians continued their expansionist policies, getting vengeance on the smaller rebels that had been breaking away. The Makarans and launched their own invasion, specifically to the south, so that they could flee the Mycenaean. No, the Rhodians, I'm so stupid. But they were pushed out of their old homeland. Then the Rhodians went to war with Hyrkos. They were able to negotiate reunification with the Gedos, allowing the people of Gedos to not have to die. Hyrkos would launch their own expansion. They first took out the southern Makarans, and then realized that the northern Makarans still were alive. The northern Makarans were barely able to flee, but then they couped the government of the Qaeda Horde and took their territory. The Balaran Horde was going to do something, but then they had to focus on other things. Phrygia, I guess, a new state of merchants who had formed between the hordes and the plains into the north and the more quote-unquote civilized nation and so the south. Meanwhile, another group, the Durds, formed a new state on the coast of what in an alternate universe is known as Albania. Look, I needed to refer to something. They quickly expanded further south, and the Durs also built Durtown, which was actually really impressive for the name. Name containing even evidence of aqueducts. By this point, the Makarans had finally learned that they didn't have plot armor as the Sidex, who technically are a Balaran group, so we're coloring like this. This decided to finally revolt. They formed the first city of the region in Geos, and then continued. He had plans for further invasions. But a group of Illyrian pirates washed up to the shores and formed the pirates, because a really bad translation of the word for pirate, and they quickly overwhelmed the coast of the Alecans. And they elected a new leader who would be stronger, and then fought the pirates. But they were stopped around Slovenia and had to settle for other regions. So they went to capture Durtown, starting a war with the Durds, who really didn't like it with their capital being taken from them. Meanwhile, the Hirtkos finally founded their own religion, Pikism, the belief in the holy deity Pik and his unholy large family. Apparently, Pik though didn't really like Hirtkos because they supported the Time Rebellion, which is why even though technically the religion of Pikism was popular in both states, it was more expressed as in the time. Then the Hirtkos would be hit hard by their neighbors, and even the Boer who had made Boertown, this time representative of the name as it had nothing going for it, decided to plan for a possible invasion. But to their south forms Sesia. The Sesians and seized the regions south of the Boer. And finally, an age of unity and peace came around. Around this time, the Hebrideans decided to get a new king, and afterwards, it's decided finally to unite with none other than the Myra, who at this point had pretty good trade connections. Technically, the Fidians were more cool and trady, but their theory was that by the Fidians owning both sides of the Fidians' territory, the Fidians would have to trade with them. And this worked as Fidos quickly had an entire section of their town dedicated to keeping specifically traders from both regions. They then sided with the Sidics and united with them. And afterwards, it's declared another union. Now, the only problem was that no one would accept this union. And thankfully for me, Pale Tantan hasn't patched this. Please, Pale Tantan, do not patch this. It's the only way I can avoid making countries I never wanted to. Meanwhile, the Polabs finally got into the action of getting a new king. This king was used for expansionist purposes. He invaded the highlands and the lowlands, extending the Polabs' territory. These expansions were continuous and they were brutal. Pretty odd for a age of peace and unity. But then again, this was done away from the Ridians, who were the center of civilization, at least at the time. Then, and the Keplins, relatives of the Hirtkos, settled across the Dnieper Valley. Yep, they still called it the Dnieper. I'm not going to come up with names for all of these. They made the city of Hyderia, and afterwards, they learn of the Polabs by invading them by a Hyderian raiding group. The leader of the Hyderian raiding group became the new king and then built a city there. which he called Kilapolabia, which means Colabia, because apparently they needed to cement that was true. They'd as soon decide to unite with the Boer or people since they were both pretty close with each other. The Boer leaders then took over the Kaplan leadership, and afterwards they'd continue urbanizing. With Side being built. Meanwhile, the Hirtkos only went further down into the gutters. With an unknown tribe declaring themselves as their own country. The problem was that only a turn later, in turn number 64, or the banana, it took Nene from probably the mountains after being pushed out by the Durs, went into new mountains where they'd form the banana state. Meanwhile, I'm split into another state. Timmy's. Okay, Timmy, I guess. Though there's time in Timmy, I guess. Bro, what are these names? The Illics to defend their kingdom made the city of Hakili. Not far from the Rhodians, but at this point they were pretty chill. Meanwhile, the Mycenaeans decided not to bore themselves with adopting new religions and instead did some religious persecution and crackdowns. Remember the Scythians? They built El Sicily-land. I don't ask why, they just built Sicily-land, okay? And new splits were happening in the banana, with the banana declaring their independence from the banana, not feeling represented. Then the Benini declared their own independence, making the situation ever worse. So they turned to the Order of the Altar to hopefully fix their problems, believing that joining the Rhodians' religion would give the Rhodians a reason to protect them. No, because the Rhodians had other things to do, much, much bigger fish to fry. For example, the Fry were dozens of rebels who left. And during this time, the Makaros also built a massive fort around their city, Ibgio. Not inspired by anything else. They're totally different. By this point, this was what major city regions looked like, or everywhere that has a population zone. And finally, the Polabs decided to begin an age of division. An age of division that would bear very badly for the future of this world. Anyways, thank you everyone for watching. It was my first time actually trying to make a storytelling video with a map that didn't involve realism. Anyways, thank you for Thank you. Please like and subscribe since you probably liked it. If you watched all the way to the end. And goodbye. I first need to